So, the Minnesota Vikings lost a couple of quarterbacks in free agency this week, leaving them with a bit of a "now what" situation. You'd think the answer would be simple: elevate their shiny new first-round pick, J.J. McCarthy, and find a veteran backup. But nope, things are getting spicy in Minnesota. The Vikings brain trust is reportedly mulling over the possibility of pursuing none other than Aaron Rodgers. Now, Rodgers wouldn't be coming in to hold McCarthy's clipboard, he'd be the starter, potentially putting McCarthy's development on the back burner. And that's where things get complicated. This article lays out 4 huge questions the Vikings need to answer before even thinking about bringing Rodgers to Minnesota. First and foremost, is Rodgers willing to take a benching if the Vikings decide it's time to turn the reins over to McCarthy in 2025? That's a tough one, considering Rodgers has never really been benched when healthy. Second, how long does Rodgers even intend to play? He's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. What if he plays well in 2025? Does he want another year? Does he retire? The Vikings need to know his long-term plans. Third, what impact would signing Rodgers have on McCarthy? The kid already lost his rookie season to injury. How would he feel about the team potentially bringing in a veteran to start over him? The Vikings need to at least have a conversation with McCarthy about this. And finally, is Rodgers willing to end his career mentoring his successor? We all remember the awkward transitions in Green Bay with Favre and Rodgers, and then Rodgers and Love. But the article points out that Rodgers was reportedly a willing mentor to Zach Wilson during his time with the Jets. So, maybe there's hope? Ultimately, the Vikings have some serious questions to answer before they even think about bringing Aaron Rodgers to town. It could be a brilliant move that gets them into contention, or it could create a quarterback controversy and hinder the development of their young prospect. It's a high-stakes gamble, and the rest of the NFL is watching to see what. The new NFL league year officially kicked off on Wednesday, and teams have been moving fast to snatch up the top free agents. But if your team hasn't made a splash yet, don't despair. There's still some serious talent waiting to be signed. Let's dive into some of the best available players still out there. First up, the big one, quarterback Aaron Rodgers. We still don't have a definitive answer on whether Rodgers even wants to play next season. He'll be turning 42 in December, but he showed some flashes of his old form late last year with the Jets. While he might not be at MVP level anymore, he's still likely better than some of the starting quarterbacks we'll see in Week 1. Which team will take a chance on the veteran gunslinger? Next, we have wide receiver Amari Cooper. He had a bit of an injury-plagued season with the Bills last year, which might explain his lower production. But let's not forget, this guy had a 1.250-yard season in 2023 and has been a consistently productive receiver throughout his career. He'll be 31 in June. Was last year just a blip, or the start of a decline? Teams will need to figure that out. Speaking of talented receivers with question marks, Stephon Diggs is also available. In a bizarre move, the Texans restructured his deal right after trading for him, making him a free agent this year. Unfortunately, Diggs tore his ACL in Week 8 last season. That injury, combined with his age, he turns 32 in November, makes him a risky signing. Despite his past production, another big-name receiver still looking for a team is Keenan Allen. His trade to the Bears last spring didn't exactly pan out as hoped. He still put up decent numbers with 70 catches for 744 yards and 6 touchdowns. But he struggled to fully fit into the offense. Allen turns 33 next month, but he's still a crafty route runner who can beat both man and zone coverage. On the offensive line, veteran offensive tackle Cam Robinson is available. He was a bit inconsistent after a mid-season trade to the Vikings. But in fairness, he wasn't joining the most talented offensive line in the league. He turns 30 in October and is reportedly looking for one more big payday. He can definitely be a positive contributor to the right team. Finally, on the defensive side, cornerback Asante Samuel Jr. is still out there. He's coming off a shoulder injury that sidelined him for most of the 2024 season. However, he's still young at just 25 years old, has plenty of experience, and is a good tackler with impressive closing speed. Expect a team in need of secondary help to snatch him up. So, there you have it. While the initial rush of free agency might be over, there's still some intriguing talent available that could make a significant impact for the teams that sign them. Keep your eyes peeled for more moves in the coming days. So, Amari Cooper, a guy who's been a Pro Bowler 5 times, is a free agent again. At 30 years old, he won't even turn 31 until June. You'd think teams would be lining up for his services. The Washington Commanders, for example, were reportedly interested in him back in 2020 and could still use some receiver depth behind Terry McLaurin and maybe even Deebo Samuel if that trade happens. Cooper in that mix could give Washington a pretty formidable veteran trio. Right? Well, hold your horses. Matthew Berry of NBC Sports recently spoke with an offensive coach from one of Cooper's former teams at the NFL Combine. And this coach had a pretty blunt assessment. He said Cooper was done. Ouch. Now, you might think that's just one coach with a grudge. But let's look at Cooper's recent situation. After a solid 2023 season with the Browns, he was traded to the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, who desperately needed wide receiver help for their MVP quarterback Josh Allen, didn't exactly see Cooper light up the scoreboard. He only had 297 yards in 8 games with them. And now, the Bills have chosen not to retain him, despite their continued need at the position. That definitely raises some eyebrows. The article suggests that while the Commanders could use more receiver depth, they're likely to opt for cheaper and faster options than Cooper, especially since he wouldn't be the primary target with McLaurin and potentially Samuel ahead of him. So, what's the deal with Amari Cooper? Is he really done at just 30? His production did dip last season, but he's still relatively young for a veteran receiver. The fact that the Bills, a team in need, didn't keep him is certainly concerning. Maybe that coach saw something that suggests Cooper's best days are behind him. Or maybe a change of scenery and a different offensive scheme could rejuvenate him. It's definitely a storyline to watch as free agency continues. Will a team take a chance on the former star? Or is this the beginning of the end for Amari Cooper's career? Only time will tell. Steelers Nation, the quest for your next franchise quarterback continues. We've been hearing the rumblings about Aaron Rodgers potentially landing in the Steel City, and Russell Wilson's name has also been thrown into the mix. But now, ESPN's Chris Canty has thrown a real curveball into the conversation. He thinks Steelers general manager Omar Khan should pick up the phone and inquire about the availability of San Francisco 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy. Yes, you heard that right, Brock Purdy, the guy who went from Mr. Irrelevant to leading the 49ers to the Super Bowl, could potentially be on the Steelers' radar. Purdy is entering the final year of his cheap rookie deal. And while he's been a steal for San Francisco, extending him is going to cost a pretty penny. Canty argues that the Steelers haven't had the best track record finding quarterbacks outside of their legendary duo of Ben Roethlisberger and Terry Bradshaw. He believes the 49ers might be in a position where they need to shed some salary as their Super Bowl window might be narrowing. Making a call about Purdy worth it, even if the answer is a resounding no. So, what kind of financial commitment would the Steelers be looking at with Purdy? NFL Network's Ian Rapoport suggests that while an extension isn't imminent, it's definitely on the horizon for the 49ers. And the numbers could be huge. With quarterbacks like Dak Prescott earning around $60 million per year and others like Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence in the $55 million range, Purdy could very well command a similar salary. This quarterback predicament for the Steelers comes partly from their inability to reach a deal with Justin Fields, who ended up signing with the Jets. And as of now, they're still waiting on Aaron Rodgers to make his decision, with Russell Wilson seemingly being a backup plan. Trading for Brock Purdy would certainly be a surprising move for the Steelers. He's proven he can win, but he's also still relatively early in his career. Would the 49ers even consider trading him? And would the Steelers be willing to give up the draft capital it would likely take to acquire him? Plus the massive contract extension he'd command? It's definitely a wild thought. But in the unpredictable world of the NFL, you can never say never. What do you think, Steelers fans? Would you be on board with a trade for Brock Purdy? Let us know in the comments below. Poor Russell Wilson, he's been hitting the free agent trail, visiting the Cleveland Browns and then the New York Giants, who desperately need a quarterback after losing Daniel Jones and Drew Lock. You'd think a veteran with Wilson's resume would have teams clamoring. But as of right now, crickets. No contract offers on the table, according to reports. And why the hold up? Well, it seems the Giants, just like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings, are all in a holding pattern, waiting to see what the 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers decides to do. Rodgers has apparently had several NFL teams on the edge of their seats all week while he makes his choice known. It's like the whole league is playing a giant game of, Rodgers says. The Giants hosting Wilson seemed like it could have been the move to finally end this quarterback stare down. If Wilson had signed in New York, it would have taken one potential suitor off Rodgers' list. But alas, the Giants, like the Steelers and Vikings, seem content to twiddle their thumbs and wait for Rodgers' royal decree. This has understandably left fanbases frustrated and likely Wilson himself feeling like he's stuck in free agency purgatory with a real possibility of not landing a starting gig. The article even suggests that the Giants might have made a more lucrative offer to Rodgers than the Steelers have. But even that hasn't been enough to sway him. Meanwhile, most of the Rodgers news on Friday centered around his potential flirtation with the Vikings, who, remember, already have a young quarterback in J.J. McCarthy and are reportedly only looking for a backup or someone to compete with him. The Steelers and Giants, on the other hand, have wide-open quarterback situations. The Steelers did make one move to solidify their quarterback room, bringing back their veteran backup Mason Rudolph on a 2-year deal. So, while they're waiting on Rodgers, they've at least got a familiar face in the building. It's a wild quarterback market out there, folks, and it seems like the dominoes can't fall until Aaron Rodgers makes his move. Will Russell Wilson eventually find a starting job? Will Rodgers finally make a decision and end this free agency limbo? Stay tuned, because this quarterback saga is far from over. Steelers fans, you might be thinking about Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson potentially donning the black and gold. But a new mock draft is throwing a different name into the mix for the future of your quarterback position, Shedeur Sanders. That's right, according to the latest 2025 NFL mock draft from CBS Sports. The Pittsburgh Steelers are projected to snag the Colorado Buffaloes quarterback with the 21st overall pick. With Justin Fields heading to the Jets and Russell Wilson likely finding a new home elsewhere, the Steelers definitely have a void to fill under center. While veterans like Rodgers or even a return of Mason Rudolph could be short-term fixes, this mock draft suggests the Steelers might be looking to build for the future. Kyle Stackpole of CBS Sports believes Sanders could slide out of the top 10 and right into the Steelers' lap. He praised Sanders' toughness and decision-making, saying those are two traits that could lead to success in Pittsburgh. Now, he did mention that Sanders might not have the same ceiling as some other quarterbacks in the draft, but his resilience and smarts seem to have caught the eye of this particular mock drafter. This is certainly an interesting scenario to ponder. Shedeur Sanders has been a high-profile player, and following his dad, Deion Sanders, to Colorado has kept him firmly in the spotlight. He's shown flashes of brilliance, but also faced some challenges, particularly with the Buffalo's offensive line. The big question this mock draft raises is whether the Steelers, if Sanders is indeed available at pick 21, could pass on addressing what many consider their biggest need on the roster, the defensive line. The Steelers have historically prided themselves on their strong defense, and bolstering the defensive line is often a top priority. Would they be willing to potentially wait on that need to secure their quarterback of the future in Sanders? It's important to remember that this is just one mock draft, and a lot can change between now and the 2025 NFL Draft. But the idea of Shedeur Sanders potentially leading the Pittsburgh Steelers is definitely a storyline that will have fans talking. What do you think, Steelers Nation? Would you be excited about drafting Sanders in the first round? Let us know in the comments below.